in 2018, the Fast Company magazine gave SGA as one of the most innovative companies award. And the mind behind that award is Michael Schroeder, who is a principal and director of virtual design and construction at SGA. Michael, welcome to our show Face to Face at the Boston Real Estate Times.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So we are going to talk about virtual design and construction, which you have really pioneered. And it's an amazing concept, which is going to catch up very well in the real estate architecture, construction, design industry. Yeah. And of course, the SGA is one of the pioneers in this area, and you have been behind this. So there's a lot of confusion between virtual design construction, known as a VDC, and BIM, BIM. So let's first start to clarify that, and then we'll move our focus to VDC.
Sure. Well, you're right. There is a lot of misunderstanding between these two acronyms. They're both not perfectly suited for design or construction, but I can tell you that building information modeling has been around for 20 years. It is really a technology, a platform where people develop the buildings in models, and information is associated with those models, and we can use that for design and documentation. Recently, virtual design and construction focused mostly in construction, on the construction sector, was evolved around processes. How do we integrate technology and people? And so our virtual design and construction approach is really centered around people, process, and technology, and BIM is a piece of this puzzle. It's not the focus of virtual design and construction. It is a critical feature of virtual design.
So out of 100 points, how many points will go to BIM in the whole VDC context, roughly?
I would say that about 30, maybe.
30. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Good. Mm-hmm.
I think it's you'll see that that we believe that people and personalities that come on a project bring a lot of experience and knowledge and know-how as it relates to using these tools and technology. And so our approach has been, we want to streamline the process and have a tech-forward approach, but also take advantage of the people, change that process, that traditional delivery process, get rid of the roadblocks and streamline, and then use technology like, of course, building information modeling. And I'll talk about a model-first approach, which is a completely new approach that I think will change the way we deliver our projects in the future.
So I think, as you said earlier, people, process, and technology, for any project, anywhere, these are the three most important components for any project to succeed. Right. And so if you can just talk briefly that how SGA is able to integrate seamlessly all these three components.
It's a real challenge. It's not something that traditional projects have done very well. In the traditional world, and I'll just relate what we're doing now to the traditional process, because I think most people are familiar with that project delivery process where you have the traditional design and then construction on one hand, and you have groups of people with a wall separating them, usually contractual. And so our approach has always been to see this pick from one point of view, as opposed to your side or my side, and how can we optimize the whole process of design and construction and develop rules around a system to organize people, to change the process, to make it much more streamlined, cut out the waste, and use technology for what it's good for. Building information modeling has been around, like I mentioned, for 20 years. It is good for a lot of things, and we don't use it to its capacity. And so we want to be able to use technologies, the web-based technologies, communication technologies, collaboration techniques, and integrate them together. And so our approach is fairly methodical at first, and then as the team is onboarded, we develop plans and processes to solve the problems for that particular project.
Now, SGA has already, as far as my understanding is concerned, used this VDC at several projects in Boston area and outside Boston. If you can, if you do not feel comfortable naming the client, just give us some idea that how it has worked and what has been the benefits.
Right. I call it, VDC, the future of project delivery, but really we've done it. As you mentioned, we've done this on projects, and so it's our past and our present currently.
Mm-hmm.
But our clients are very happy with the delivery that this new approach that we've given them on projects, fairly large projects, 800,000 square feet, et cetera, complex projects, facilities where we've had challenges with schedule, many different participants, many different team members, and organizing them around this new paradigm, which is highly collaborative. Breaks down, I mentioned those traditional barriers between communication. So we've been very successful on our past projects, and our clients sort of understand that and have rewarded us with other projects as well to keep that going. But it's those educated owners and people that are enlightened that understand that there's a better way to do things that we started with, and now we're looking to open that up to the rest of the industry so that folks can understand that this is a new method, a new approach that they can apply in their projects.
Okay. Now, if I'm a developer or I'm a tenant and I'm asking you SGA to do use the VDC for my project, so few things are very clear in my head. As a developer, I want the project to be done on time. I want it to be done on absolutely on schedule, if not before, budget, etc. Whatever the changes come along. So give us some sort of a step-by-step approach to that concept.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, schedule and budget is very important, and ultimately it comes down to predictability, right? The clients really want to see the future and say, okay, how can we predict the outcome of this project? All of our processes are engineered around that philosophy. It's like understanding and being able to predict as much as we can about this project so that we can clarify the risk and understand where it is and where it isn't. And therefore we can have discussions about actual relevant facts in the project as opposed to what could theoretically happen that may not be a possibility. So our process is first and foremost, identify the team that can deliver in this way. So we're extremely active when it comes to vetting the project participants. So we're not very passive. We don't sit back. We will actively help select the construction managers for the project, develop RFPs for their requirements to engage in the project so they understand what they're getting involved with. And then we go through a really rigorous onboarding process so they fully understand this approach and this delivery approach. Then we bring them through this onboarding process, and that's a part of team building as well. And we create these ESP sessions that will really facilitate the communication between the designers, the engineers, the subcontractors, and CMs. So it begins to create a culture on the project of success. And we want to foster that as much as possible. So that's part of the process.
Is there any number you can share with us?
Number of?
In terms of saving cost or timeline or the process in the project?
Well, first of all, for schedule, we want to be on time. As I mentioned, we want to be able to predict the outcome. So schedule is a key aspect of risk on a project. So I want our projects to be 100% on schedule. And that doesn't mean delivering early or late. It means on schedule. We've decided that the project needs to be. And we've done that. We've reduced the costs on projects due to unforeseen change orders, upwards of 85% reduction in change orders on projects. That reduces quite a bit of the money required to manage that sort of risk. And I think it could be reappropriated and the owner understands in better ways than to be in contingencies. So having an ability to look at those costs, control them, reduce change orders less than 1% normally on projects, as well as focus on 100% on-time delivery. that is that's key in the minds of a lot of our owners.
So now, in of course in COVID era, everybody is working from home in different places, and you guys were doing this even before COVID. A lot of work. You can do this remotely. So how a VDC fits into this context?
Well, it was initially, it was a bit of a challenge thinking how can we, how can we create this collaborative space? Because I'm a big advocate of co-location, or we call our collaboration location, our shared space, where we can get designers and the contractors working together in the same room. I call it shoulder to shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and solving problems in real time. That's how we create a lot of the efficiencies on our project. But with obviously today, shoulder to shoulder means more than 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And our new approach, so we've adjusted, just like we've adjusted for all of our projects, and that includes a virtual co-location environment where we set up an entire virtual dashboard and tools so that everyone can access and be available for what we call a virtual co-location to support that type of workflow, highly collaborative workflow in real time, but just remotely.
Okay. Now, Michael, if you can also talk a little bit about SGA, what type of services it does, what are some of its expert areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, SGA is a full service architectural firm. We have interiors as well. A big portion of our work is interiors, branded environments, virtual design and construction. We do higher education work as well as life sciences projects. So it's across the board. Very exciting to work with a diverse set of people that understand the architecture of the building, the interiors of the building, and it's really, I think, this dynamic office where you have those types of services. We also have a building sciences group that helps us to create our own energy and sustainability plans for models, for modeling buildings. We don't outsource that.
So how does the VDC play a role in SGA projects? Is the VDC totally different? Client has to hire separately, or the VDC also works with the other SGA projects?
Both. We work with our own SGA, with our own projects within SGA. Of course, we support them 100%, but we'll also work with, as a third party, if you will, between existing architecture and construction companies. And we've done that in the past as well, just because I think there's a hunger and a need for people that have an ability to work like highly collaboratively between design and construction. You'll either have construction managers and builders on one side saying they know how to manage design, or you'll have design saying we know how to manage construction. But in reality, you have to separate yourself a bit from the two and go with the and be an advocate for the owner, but also say, look, we're going to bridge this process between the two sides. And I mentioned that earlier, there's this wall between us. Our approach is really overlapping the design with the subcontractor community and creating that level of integration and communication that reduces the risk and increases the efficiency of the entire project team. This is, I think, it's hard to underestimate how much value that actually provides. It's easy to underestimate how much value that provides.
So now I'm going to ask you a very imaginary question. So if you go back 5 years from now and see how the real estate projects were being delivered, how the technology was used, how the BIM was used, and then look today what is happening in the marketplace because of COVID-19. And if you put these two contexts in mind, then tell us in the next 5 years or 10 years, how the construction industry or design industry is going to look like, and what role VDC is going to play in that.
Well, it's going to be very difficult to project 10 years into the future. I can tell you it's hard to predict 5 years, but we're going to see a dramatic shift in our industry toward these new highly integrated approaches where we have designers working with builders and the subcontractors, and those traditional roles that have been set up over the last 100 years that reinforce their individual silos are going to be undermined by a new process. And that if you don't take advantage of that new process now, they will be outmoded very, very quickly. So I would say within 5 or 10 years, you're going to see new advances in technology, technology-forward approaches like ours, where we can use new capabilities, even with artificial intelligence, being able to develop new predictability around schedules and costs, to integrating the very best teams from around the country, not just geographically located here. I think you're going to see a new dynamic organism that is developed around design and construction that is going to be highly competitive.
Yeah. And your last word on VDC.
I would just say that it's the future of design and construction. Once you've tried it, once you've worked in this way, it is very, very difficult to think that you're going to deliver a project any other way. And when I see things like that occur on top, where you see people and their eyes light up and say, "Oh, I don't want to go back. Right? I don't want to go back to doing the way that we used to do this." This is exactly the way I'd like to work. Directly with an engineer and a subcontractor, a designer, and the end user. And we're all working together to solve this project and make that process incredibly efficient. When I see people's eyes light up and that this is such a great experience, then they don't want to go back. So I think that is what I'd like to say is that's, in a nutshell, it's an advancement. It's an evolution of our design and construction process that I think is just better all around for the owners and the participants in the process. And I think it's a pleasure to be a part of this change that's occurring.
Now, is there any particular size of projects where application of VDC becomes more cost effective? See, for example, if you have a $5 million project, you have a $50 million project, or $100 million project,
right,
where you have to have the VDC included in that budget.
Well, I look at that problem. I look at that question as being related to collaboration. So collaboration is given lip service on many different fronts. You see that where it's easy to write down, but what it really means is attention on projects. We're trying to get people's attention and focus to solve problems immediately and at that moment when that problem needs to be solved. And so our struggle for attention means that if a project is not that large, or is just 1/5 of what is on their radar, they're only going to give us a small sliver of their attention. And often it's asynchronous, so it's maybe a message and not a message back. I want synchronous, which means live communication as much as possible, and I want to see that happen with a robust attention. So those two things usually require a project of a certain scale in order for them to be bought into that. Or we're compressing the schedule so we can say, let's get more of your attention now on this project when you need it. And then you can go off and do other projects, because we know that's what the design and construction community do. They work on many projects.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for your time. All the best in the future, and thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Excellent.